He's the Stephen Bradbury of Australian politics. You try eating a shit sandwich for 3 years and see how much of a good mood you're in. Because they think it sends the message that touching the money is worse than touching the choir boys.
Why is Mark McGowan being half pregnant about the finals?
If we host the AFL final series in WA and it goes off without a hitch, and we all get to see a grand final and Basil gets his parade through the city and we get to show Eddie Maguire that we can do it just as well as Victoria, if all that happens, what will you think about Mark McGowan afterwards?
That he's made 60,000 dreams come true.
Yep, but his approval rating isn't going to go up that much. If you're not on board Team Mark by now, a few games of footy isn't going to change your mind about him. Now, if we host the final series and it turns out that someone sitting on the back flank has Delta, and we have a super spreader event that turns us into the new New South Wales, what are you going to think about Mark McGowan then?
Not happy, Jan.
No, you're going to blame him. You're going to blame him for taking what in hindsight will be very clearly a massive unnecessary risk at a time when Australia is at the crossroads in its fight to contain Delta. And we will all pile on. It's what we do. And his approval rating will tank. McGowan can't afford for his popularity to take that kind of a dive because it's the only thing that's keeping him in the job. He's what is known as an unaligned MP. He doesn't belong to a Labor Party faction, which is like being the slowest gazelle on the Serengeti. There's danger everywhere. You want to know why Roger Cook is still Health Minister, even though a patient asking for Panadol is enough to send a hospital into ambulance bypass? It's because he has the backing of the dominant left faction of the Labor Party.
And McGowan doesn't.
Nope, not the left and not the right. He became leader of the party in 2012 because nobody else put their hand up. He's the Stephen Bradbury of Australian politics. Now, unlike Steve, he's obviously got a few runs on the board since then and done a pretty good job. But he still lives and dies according to how popular he is. That forces him to be a pragmatist. Every single decision this man makes is calculated through the prism of risk and reward. When your approval rating's at 88 or 90%, every move away from the status quo is inherently risky. I think he actually wants the finals here, but having the courage of your convictions is the second most difficult thing to do in politics.
What's the first?
Apparently, it's saying the word chihuahua.
Member for the Kimberley said that she would fight like a chihuahua.
David Honey, good on you. The leader of the Liberal Party finally manages to make the news, and it's because he can't pronounce a dog breed.
Don't blame me.
Can't take a trick, really. Now, how about Justin Langer? Fair crack?
Yeah. Apparently some execs in Cricket Australia from New South Wales are getting upset because the coach, who's from Western Australia, is occasionally a bit prickly. And some players feel like they need a hug. How would these guys be with Alan Border as captain? Seriously. What did they think they were buying when they gave this guy the job? On his debut, he's smashed by Ian Bishop. Imagine that guy thundering down the pitch here. He's pounded by the quicks ever since. He's got cracked ribs, concussions, he's got cuts on his head. 20 years ago, Steve Waugh called him the greatest batsman alive. He's got a black belt in Taekwondo. The guy's tough, which is exactly what we needed to bring the Australian cricket team back from oblivion. It's like they've all forgotten about how bad things were after Cape Town. We were sporting pariahs. We were like modern-day Hansi Cronjes. He rehabilitated the team and our international reputation. The team's had a bad run, and now he's under attack for being grumpy. You try eating a sandwich for 3 years and see how much of a good mood you're in.
Hey, you keep writing about this Father Joe Walsh. Why?
Lazarus has got nothing on this guy. In 3 years, he's gone from rock star priest at St Joseph's in Subi, where every Western suburbs personality had him do their wedding or baptism or funeral, to alleged criminal charged with the theft of $500,000, to being sued by the Catholic Archdiocese.
That'd test his faith.
It did. And the reason I know that is because Joe told me.
My deep faith is there, but certainly has.
He's back in the pulpit. But up till now, he's never spoken about what went on after the coppers knocked on his door.
Why was this guy so popular?
Well, he wasn't like other priests. You know, he was a snappy dresser. They called him Father Armani. Some people called him Father Versace. He liked to drink and a feed, and he wasn't picky about who he preached to. Gays, divorcees, prisoners, sex workers, and some pretty heavy characters.
Not a good look.
No, he says that's his job.
Well, I visited prisons over the last 15 years.
It made other priests uncomfortable, and there was a bit of jealousy about his success at raising money. St Joseph's is a pretty flash-looking place now, but 20 years ago it was a shambles. It was, though, in the Golden Triangle. To save it, he put together a property deal to build a 3-storey office on the land next door. The rent from that joint gives the church $300,000 a year. And get this, when the contract expires in 40 years, the building is owned outright by St Joseph's. So Joe leaves the church in 2016 a hero. The new priest comes in, starts going through the books, and freaks out. There's money going everywhere. Business class flights, holidays, fancy dinners. Tim Costello, he's the Archbishop, reckons something's not right. And Tim's in a hell of a predicament with this. Joe is the church's rainmaker. Plus, he's dying of cancer.
I have had 18 rounds of chemo. They've told me over a year ago that I had a 2-year till my termination.
Going after a dying man might seem a bit unchristian, but the Archbishop didn't want the church to be accused of sweeping the problem under the carpet, which the Catholics have a rich history of doing. So he calls the cops. They charge Joe with stealing $500,000, but the DPP drops the case.
Why?
We don't really know, but it might have been because under canon law, that's the system of internal regulations that govern the church, all very archaic. Under those laws, a parish priest can pretty much do anything he wants with money donated to his church. Costello is furious with the DPP. He sues Joe for $500,000. That makes the parishioners furious because they think it sends the message that touching the money is worse than touching the choir boys. Joe eventually agrees to pay back some of the disputed money and the civil case is dropped. Everyone's friends again and it's all very New Testament.
So did he do anything wrong?
Ask him.
I would have done everything exactly as I would have done.
Joe says to make money, and he made millions, you have to spend money.
If I wanted to get money from you, Ben, I would bring you out for a nice coffee and we'd chat about your involvement. How would you like to help? What are your gifts?
And as for the Father Armani thing?
I've always dressed very well and God help us for good taste.
Amen to that. I'm Ben Harvey.